My wife became a doctor and celebrated by filing for divorce the same day. I signed without argument and vanished completely. 8 years. That was how long I spent building someone else's dream while mine collected dust in the corner. 8 years of working double shifts to pay for her medical school tuition. 8 years of frozen dinners because she was always studying. 8 years of canceled vacations because she needed to focus on exams. 8 years of hearing, "Once I graduate, everything will be different." The graduation ceremony was on a Thursday in May. I had requested the day off work specifically to be there and had even bought a new shirt for the occasion. This was supposed to be our moment, our achievement, the day our shared future finally began. I sat in that packed auditorium and watched my wife, now named Marissa, walk across the stage. When they called her full name, Dr. Marissa Hale, I stood and clapped harder than anyone else in the room. 8 years of sacrifice were finally paying off, or so I believed. The ceremony ended around noon. Families were taking pictures, laughing, crying, making dinner plans for celebratory feasts. I waited by the car while she posed with her classmates, that diploma clutched in her hand like a golden ticket to a new universe. When she finally walked over to me, I expected a hug, a kiss, maybe a whispered thank you. Instead, she handed me a manila envelope like it was a receipt. "What's this?" I asked. "Divorce papers," she replied as casually as if she were telling me tomorrow's weather. I already signed my part. I stared at the envelope, then at her face. There was no emotion in her eyes, no hesitation in her voice. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was planned, rehearsed, deliberate. "Are you serious right now?" I said, "Dead serious," Marissa answered. "Look, I don't need you anymore. I have my degree. I have job offers. I have a future. You were helpful during school, but that chapter of my life is over." Helpful. 8 years of my life reduced to one word. What was I then? Some kind of walking, talking financial aid program. She shrugged. "You knew what you were signing up for." I was clear about my priorities from day one. Medical school came first. Now I'm a doctor and I want to start fresh. No dead weight. Dead weight. That was what 8 years of marriage meant to her. Her colleagues were starting to gather nearby, glancing over while pretending not to stare. Some of them I recognized from the rare social events I'd attended where I'd been introduced as the husband who worked overtime to pay their friends' tuition. I opened the envelope and skimmed through the papers. Everything was already filled out. She divided our assets, claimed the car she wanted, and listed the apartment as solely hers since she'd soon be making doctor money. I was left with the bare minimum the law required. "You've really thought this through, haven't you?" I asked. "I'm not stupid. I know what I want," she said. I looked around at her classmates watching us, at the family celebrating nearby, at the woman I'd supported for 8 years who was now discarding me like a used textbook. Then I did something that surprised everyone, especially her. I pulled a pen from my jacket pocket, leaned against the car, and signed every page without reading the rest. Right there in the parking lot in front of her peers, I ended our marriage with the same casualness she had shown when she started this conversation. "There," I said, handing the papers back to her. "Congratulations on your graduation and your divorce." Her mouth fell open. She had expected drama, tears, begging, maybe even anger. What she got instead was efficient cooperation. "Wait, that's it. You're not going to fight this." "Try to talk me out of it," she stammered. "Why would I fight for someone who just called me deadweight?" I replied. I turned away and walked off, leaving her standing there with her diploma in one hand and our signed divorce papers in the other. Behind me, whispers swelled as her colleagues tried to piece together what they had just witnessed. I didn't look back, didn't raise my voice, didn't make a scene. I simply walked out of that parking lot and out of her life completely. As I turned the corner, the last thing I heard was one of her classmates asking, "Who was that guy? And why did he just walk away from his own car?" I kept walking. She wanted to start fresh with no dead weight. Perfect. She was about to find out exactly what dead weight I had been carrying all those years. 3 days after the graduation parking lot incident, I was gone. Not just from the apartment, but from the entire state. While she was probably expecting me to come crawling back with apologies and flowers, I was busy executing the most thorough disappearing act of my life. The beauty of being married to someone who never paid attention to finances was that she had no idea what I actually controlled. Marissa thought she was getting the apartment because she'd be making doctor money. What she didn't know was that I had been paying the rent for my personal account for the past 2 years, not our joint account. The lease was in my name alone. I spent those 3 days liquidating everything that mattered. I closed our joint accounts and moved my half to a new bank she'd never heard of. I canceled the utilities that were in my name, transferred my phone number to a different carrier, and even canceled the streaming subscription she loved so much. By Saturday morning, I was loading my pickup truck with the only things that truly belonged in my next life. Clothes, tools, my grandmother's china that she never appreciated, and my collection of vintage records she always complained were taking up space. Portland, Oregon became my target. Not because I had ties there, but precisely because I didn't. I wanted a clean slate in a city where no one knew my story and no one would think to look for me. The apartment I found was modest, a one-bedroom about 15 minutes from downtown with a view of a parking lot instead of the skyline Marissa always bragged she would someday live above. But it was mine, completely, legally, financially mine. Landing a job took less than a week. I joined a mid-sized construction firm as a construction manager working on commercial buildings. The pay was solid, the hours sane, and no one asked invasive questions about my personal life. Meanwhile, back in the city I had left, Marissa's fresh start was already beginning to crack. The first sign of trouble came when she tried to pay the rent. She discovered that landlords did not accept I'm going to be a doctor as legal tender. 3 days later, the electricity was shut off, followed by the internet. Only then did she begin to understand that I hadn't been dead weight at all. I had been the foundation. Her text messages started that first week. "We need to talk. This is ridiculous. You can't just disappear." I watched them pop up on my phone and deleted each one without reading past the preview. The call started in week 2, 27 in a single day at one point. I let every call go to voicemail, then erased each message without listening. If she had something important to say, she could send it through a lawyer. By week 3, she was reaching out to my former coworkers, hoping to extract my new contact information from someone soft-hearted. My old supervisor called to warn me that a frantic woman claiming to be my wife had shown up at the office. "I don't have a wife," I told him calmly. He understood. MO brought genuine panic for her. She tried to use me as a reference for an apartment application, only to discover my old number was disconnected. She contacted my sister, my parents, even my old college roommate. Each of them had already received my instructions. "I don't know anyone by that name," they responded. By month 3, desperation had turned her creative. She somehow tracked down my new employer and called the main office, claiming there was a family emergency. My boss passed along the message. "There is no family emergency," I explained. "I have no family by that name." He believed me and quietly flagged her number in the system. What Marissa didn't realize was how much I was enjoying my new life. Portland suited me in a way I never expected. The coffee was richer, the air felt cleaner, and people minded their own business. Nobody expected me to carry the weight of someone else's future on my shoulders. I joined a hiking group that met every weekend and started taking evening classes in project management. I even began dating again. Nothing serious at first, just conversations that didn't revolve around exams, rotations, or professors. One day, in a bookstore cafe, I met Lena, a graphic designer with ink smudged on her fingers and quiet confidence in her eyes. She had her own career, paid for her own meals, and actually asked about my thoughts instead of listing her own grievances. When I told her I'd recently gotten divorced, she simply nodded. "Good for you for knowing when to walk away," she said. No drama, no probing autopsy of what went wrong. No half-hearted suggestions of counseling or second chances, just acceptance that sometimes marriages end and moving forward is the healthiest choice. By month 6, I had stopped checking whether Marissa had tried to contact me. My days followed a rhythm that had nothing to do with her schedule or preferences. Wake at 6 o'clock, coffee and the news. Work from 7 to 4, then the gym, the trail, dinner with friends, or a quiet night with a book and the hum of my own thoughts. Simple, peaceful, mine. The irony was almost darkly amusing. While she was likely telling colleagues about her bold, fresh start as a newly single doctor, I was the one actually living a fresh start. No one treating my contributions as temporary conveniences, no one calling me dead weight. She wanted a clean slate and I had given it to her along with something she had not anticipated, a completely empty space where I used to be. 3 years into my life in Portland, I was living better than I had in the entire 8 years of our marriage. I learned later through a mutual acquaintance who couldn't resist gossip that 3 years into her medical career, Marissa had discovered that reality has a cruel sense of humor. Being a brand new doctor wasn't the instant wealth and prestige she had imagined. Her starting salary as a resident was barely more than what I had earned in construction. Except now she had 6-figure student loan debt hanging over her like a storm cloud. Loans which once upon a time had required my signature. The apartment she'd claimed in the divorce turned into a financial nightmare within 6 months. Without my income to shoulder the rent, utilities, and groceries, she burned through her savings before her first residency paycheck even arrived. She ended up taking on 2 roommates just to stay afloat, sharing the space she had envisioned as her solo kingdom. Those roommates, my acquaintance said, were far from impressed when they learned she had divorced her husband immediately after graduation. Especially when they realized they were essentially subsidizing the lifestyle she had planned to fund with Dr. money that wasn't materializing fast enough. Her work schedule was brutal. 80-hour weeks, overnight shifts, on-call weekends where she had once imagined champagne brunches, and spontaneous trips. Her glamorous single doctor life diminished into stolen naps, cafeteria food, and energy drinks. Meanwhile, I was thriving. The construction firm had promoted me to senior project manager, trusting me with some of the biggest commercial projects in the city. My salary had risen significantly. I bought a modest house with a small yard. Nothing flashy, but every inch of it was mine. The hiking group had morphed into a close circle of friends. Weekend after weekend, rain or shine, we chased trails through Oregon and Washington, and I found myself in the best shape of my life. Lena, the graphic designer, had become more than just a casual date. After a year together, we had grown into a steady, grounded relationship. She understood why I wasn't in a hurry to race down the aisle again. She had her own home, her own car, her own savings. When we went out to dinner, she insisted on splitting the bill. When I cooked, she brought wine and dessert. When she cooked, I washed dishes and arrived with flowers. Everything felt balanced, reciprocal, and beautifully adult. Back in the world I had left, Marissa's breaking point came during her second year of residency. Her car died with catastrophic engine failure, repairs costing more than the car itself. Once that would have been my problem to solve, one more crisis for me to quietly absorb. But now she faced it alone with maxed out credit cards and no savings. She rode buses and trains for 3 months before barely qualifying for a loan on a used car. The payments devouring what remained of her already thin budget. That was apparently the moment something in her finally snapped awake. She began searching for me in earnest. First, she tried social media, but I had deleted every old account and never created new ones under my real name. She then contacted every mutual friend, but most had chosen sides long ago, and her side was no longer popular. After 2 years of failed searching, she hired a private investigator, handing over a $1,000 retainer she couldn't afford. He turned up old addresses, previous employers, and family members, none of whom gave him anything useful. The breakthrough came during her 3rd year of residency when she abused her access to medical databases. She started cross-checking hospital employment records for my name tied to construction-related roles, gambling that at some point I would have needed medical care. By some small twist of fate, it worked. A routine physical I'd scheduled through my employer's health insurance generated a record that popped up in her search listing a Portland hospital and a major construction firm. Just like that, she had a state, a city, and an employer. She had found me. But the men she was looking for no longer existed. I wasn't the exhausted husband who'd worked double shifts to fund someone else's dream. I wasn't the man who quietly swallowed being called dead weight and merely helpful. I was someone who had rebuilt his entire life from the ground up and proven beyond doubt that her judgment of my worth had been completely wrong. She was about to learn that when you throw away something valuable, you don't get to decide 3 years later that you want it back. The call started on a Tuesday morning in March. My phone showed 17 missed calls from an unknown number. Then the text poured in. I know you're getting these messages. We need to talk about what happened. I made a mistake and I want to fix it. Please call me back. I deleted each message after glancing at the preview. After 3 years of silence, I had no interest in whatever crisis had suddenly refreshed her memory. The calls continued for 2 straight weeks from different numbers each time, likely borrowed from colleagues and friends. 17 calls on Tuesday, 23 on Wednesday, 31 on Thursday. As soon as I recognized the pattern, I blocked each new number. Then she escalated. One Friday afternoon, while I was on a job site reviewing blueprints, my company's receptionist called my work phone. There's a woman here claiming to be your wife, she said. She says there's a family emergency and she needs to speak with you immediately. What does she look like? I asked. Her description was unmistakable. Marissa had found my workplace and driven all the way to Portland. She was sitting in the lobby, no doubt spinning some urgent story about medical crisis and unfinished business. Tell her you couldn't reach me, I said, and that I'm out of state on a project for the next 2 weeks. Take her contact information and let her know someone will call her back. Got it. Should I actually call her back? The receptionist asked. No. An hour later, my supervisor called with an update. She had waited in the lobby for 3 hours, asking repeatedly whether I had returned any calls or shown up. When it became clear I wasn't coming, she left a handwritten note mentioning that we needed to discuss our future together. "Thanks for handling that," I told him. "No problem," he replied. "We get our share of crazy ex-spouses. I've already flagged her information." She didn't return to the office right away, but she didn't disappear either. She spent the weekend driving around Portland, searching for my truck in parking lots and apartment complexes. One of my hiking friends called to say a woman fitting her description had approached him in a coffee shop, showing him my old photo and claiming to be looking for her errant husband. "I didn't tell her anything," he said, "but she looks determined." "Thanks," I answered. "If she comes back, you've never heard of me." On Monday, she adopted an even broader strategy. She posted on neighborhood social media groups, on local apps, even on classified sites, all with the same plea. "Looking for my husband. We lost touch after my medical residency. Please help me reconnect." Lena showed me one of the posts while we were cooking dinner at my place. "This is strange," she said, scrolling on her phone. "Some woman is plastering Portland groups with this story about finding her lost husband. She's using a really old photo of you." The caption read, "Like a melodramatic misconnection, heavy with regret and promises to make things right." "Sounds like someone who doesn't understand that some bridges can't be rebuilt once they're burned," I said. Lena nodded slowly. "The comments are brutal. Most people are telling her that if her husband wanted to be found, he wouldn't have disappeared that thoroughly. They were right. It takes serious damage to make a person vanish that completely." By Wednesday, her most desperate move yet arrived. She found my address. I pulled into my driveway one evening to see her car parked at the curb in front of my house. She had been there long enough for my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, to grow suspicious. "That woman has been parked there since lunch," Mrs. Chen said, flagging me down. "She's been asking everyone if they know you." I told her I'd never seen you before in my life. "Thank you," I said. "If she bothers you again, feel free to call the police for suspicious behavior." I parked in the garage and entered through the side door, avoiding any direct contact. She knew I was home now. The real confrontation was inevitable. Around 7 o'clock, the doorbell started ringing in aggressive, repetitive bursts that went on for minutes at a time, followed by pounding on the door. I ignored it, moving calmly through my evening routine like she wasn't even there. By 9 o'clock, she began shouting. "I know you're in there," she yelled. "I saw your truck in the garage. We need to talk about this like adults. I drove 16 hours to get here. I'm not leaving until you listen to me." Porch lights flicked on up and down the block. Neighbors peered through curtains, watching the drama play out on what was usually a quiet street. I called the police non-emergency line. "There's someone trespassing and disturbing the peace at my home," I said. "My ex-wife, she's been here for hours and refuses to leave." The officer who arrived was calm and professional. He spoke to her for 10 minutes on the porch while I watched from inside. Then he knocked for me. "Sir," he said, "this woman claims to be your ex-wife and says she needs to discuss important matters with you. Are you willing to speak with her?" "No," I answered. "We've been divorced for 3 years. I do not want any communication with her. I'd like her removed from my property." He nodded. "Understood." He returned to her, his tone firmer now. I watched as she argued, gestured, pleaded, then finally got into her car and drove away. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a new text from an unknown number. "The police can't stop me from loving you. I'll wait as long as it takes." I took a screenshot and saved it in a growing file. If this escalated, I wanted a record. 3 years of silence followed by 2 weeks of chaos. She had found me, but she was about to learn that finding someone and reconnecting with them are two entirely different things. The next time she appeared, it was at a hardware store. I was at Home Depot on a Saturday afternoon loading lumber into my truck for a deck project when I heard her voice behind me. "Please don't walk away. Just give me 5 minutes," she said. I turned around. There she stood, thinner than I remembered. Dark circles under her eyes, her posture tight with exhaustion and desperation. 5 minutes for what? I asked to apologize. "To explain, to ask for another chance," she said. I shut the tailgate and faced her fully. "You had 8 years of chances," I said. "You used them all up in a parking lot 3 years ago." I was stressed, she insisted. Medical school was overwhelming. I said things I didn't mean. I've regretted it every day since. "Which part do you regret?" I asked. "Calling me deadweight or realizing that the deadweight was actually what kept your life afloat?" She flinched. "I never should have said those things," she murmured. "I was scared about starting my career. I thought I needed to be completely independent to prove I could make it as a doctor. How's that working out for you? I asked. Her jaw tightened. It's been harder than I expected. The hours, the money, everything. I see now that I gave up the best thing in my life for a career that isn't what I thought it would be. So, let me understand, I said, leaning against the truck. When you believed you were going to be wealthy and successful, you threw me away. Now that reality hit and you're struggling, suddenly I'm the best thing that ever happened to you. That's not how it was, she protested. That's exactly how it was, I answered. Your words, not mine. You told me you didn't need me anymore, that I'd been helpful during school, but that chapter was over. Remember, she looked down at the asphalt. I was wrong, she whispered. You were wrong about a lot of things, I said. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this, she said desperately. We had something good before medical school took over everything. We can have that again. I almost laughed. We never had anything good, I corrected her. I had 8 years of being your personal support system. You had 8 years of free financial and emotional labor. Those are two different relationships. That's not fair, she cried. Fair, I repeated. You got exactly what you asked for. A fresh start with no dead weight. I got what I earned after 8 years of being taken for granted. A life where I'm valued. I value you, she insisted. I always valued you. You valued what I provided, I said quietly. There's a difference. She stepped closer, eyes shining with tears. I love you, she said. I've always loved you. I just got confused about my priorities. No, I answered. You didn't get confused. You finally got honest. In that parking lot 3 years ago, you said exactly what you truly thought of me in our marriage. The only thing that's changed is your situation. People change, she pleaded. I've changed. Have you? I asked. Or are you just scared because being an adult is harder than you thought? She fell silent for a beat, then tried a different tactic. What can I do to prove that I'm different now? She asked. Nothing. I replied. Because I'm different now, too. What do you mean? She asked. I mean, the man you married doesn't exist anymore, I said. The guy who worked double shifts to pay your bills, who accepted being called dead weight and helpful. He's gone. You're talking to someone who rebuilt everything from zero. I don't believe people just become different people, she whispered. They do, I said. Especially when they're forced to start from nothing. Want to know what I've learned in the last 3 years? She nodded. I've learned that I'm actually good company when I'm not constantly managing someone else's stress, I said. I've learned I have hobbies and interests that don't orbit around exam schedules and rotations. I've learned what it's like to have conversations that don't end in complaints about professors or board exams. Her face reamed with every word. I've learned that when you date someone with their own career and money, relationships become partnerships instead of charity projects, I continued. I've learned that mutual respect is possible when both people contribute. I've learned what a real relationship looks like. You're dating someone, she said flatly. I'm engaged, I replied. She staggered back as if struck, one hand clutching her chest. Engaged, she repeated. 3 months ago. I said, we're getting married in September, but we're still married. She blurted. No, we aren't. I reminded her, you divorced me, remember? Signed papers and everything. Very efficient process. I mean, we could still, she began helplessly. If you wanted to try again. I don't, I said. I want to move forward with someone who chose me when she had options, not someone who only wants me back because her options didn't work out. Tears streaked down her face now. This isn't how it was supposed to go, she choked out. How was it supposed to go? I asked. You tracked me down after 3 years, apologized for treating me like garbage, and I gratefully take you back. I don't know, she whispered. I just thought if I could find you and explain. You thought I'd be waiting, I said. Like my life had been on pause, frozen until you decided you needed me again. Her silence was confirmation. Here's what you never understood. I said, I don't wait for people to realize my value. When you threw me away, I took you at your word. The man you're looking for has already chosen someone who appreciated him from day one. I could appreciate you now, she said weakly. Too late, I said. Someone else already does. I opened my truck door and climbed in. She stood there, hoping I'd offer some sliver of hope. Instead, I rolled down the window one last time. Next time you find something valuable, I said, try not to throw it away just because you think you found something better. Most people only get one chance to make that mistake. I drove off, leaving her in the Home Depot parking lot with the same stunned expression she'd worn 3 years earlier when I signed the divorce papers. The difference now was that she understood exactly what she had lost. 2 weeks after that encounter, she made one last desperate attempt. She showed up at my workplace again, this time armed with a different story. She told the receptionist she was a doctor with urgent medical information about my health. My supervisor called me into his office. "Your ex is back," he said. "Now she's claiming medical emergency. Want me to call security?" "Let me handle this one," I replied. I walked to the lobby. She was there in wrinkled scrubs, looking like she had survived on nothing but coffee and regret. "Medical emergency?" I asked. "I needed to see you," she said. "And you thought lying about my health was the right path?" I replied. "I am a doctor," she said weakly. "You're also lying," I answered. "There is no medical emergency, is there?" She shook her head as tears started again. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, pulling an envelope from my jacket. "I'm going to give you 2 things, and then this ends forever." First, I handed her the envelope. "This is a restraining order," I said. "Any further contact from you, direct, indirect, at work, at home, through friends, or through fake emergencies, will become a legal matter." Her hands trembled as she took it. "Second," I added, pulling out another envelope. "This is for you." She opened it slowly and stared. It was a wedding invitation, my name and Lena's written in elegant script, the September date and Portland venue printed beneath. "I want you to understand that I'm not just moving on," I said. "I have already moved on completely. The life I'm building has nothing to do with what we had." She looked at the invitation like it might vanish. "My fiancé knows about you," I continued. "She knows about our marriage, our divorce, and your recent attempts to find me. She's not threatened by you because she understands something you never did." "What's that?" Marissa asked. "That when someone chooses you every day instead of keeping you as a backup option, it creates a completely different kind of relationship." I said security had arrived hovering just behind her. "These gentlemen are going to escort you to your car." I said if I see you again, hear from you again, or if you contact anyone in my life, the next conversation will be with my lawyer and the police. She clutched the restraining order and the invitation, crying openly now. "I know I made mistakes," she sobbed. "But this feels cruel." "Cruel would be leading you on," I said. "Letting you think there was hope, or pretending that 3 years of rebuilding could be erased with one apology. This is honest." "I love you," she whispered. "I believe you think you do," I replied. "But love isn't something you discover when you're desperate. Love is what you nurture when you have choices." Security stepped forward and gently guided her to the exit. At the door, she turned one last time. "Will you ever forgive me?" she asked. "I already have," I said. "That's the only reason I was able to move on completely." She left and I never saw her again. 6 months later, I married Lena in a small ceremony surrounded by people who had watched me build a new life from nothing. During my vows, I promised to choose her every day, not only when it was convenient or when I was afraid of being alone. She promised the same. Sometimes the sharpest revenge isn't getting even, but living so well that the people who discarded you finally understand what they threw away. Marissa wanted a fresh start with no dead weight. I gave her exactly that and built something stronger, quieter, and infinitely better in the space she left behind. She got what she asked for. I got what I deserved. And in our separate lives, for the first time, we were both truly irrevocably free.